Welcome to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, as always, a lot of events to talk about at Retire Smart, but even before we get to that, uh, you're blowing up on YouTube, David Brooks. Retire Smart is apparently Dave Ramsey picked up your conversation with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business. Lay that out for us. What happened?
Well, a friend of mine who lives and works in Manhattan, he's a pharmaceutical rep, and he just sent me a text the other day, and he's like, "Hey, you're all over my feed." I'm like, "What?" And it basically was actually on Fox Business. So I don't know I don't think Ramsey had anything to do with it. I think it was
Okay.
Fox Business. I just think the popularity of the segment that we did like 2 weeks ago with Maria was a good video clip, I guess. And so they'll embed these video clips within articles, as you're going through the feed. So we happen to be just blessed to be embedded in a Dave Ramsey article. I used to teach financial peace, Dave Ramsey's course, right? Financial peace course. A lot of churches taught it, and he helps people get out of debt, et cetera. So he has a huge following. So that article following led to that video getting viewed, from what I understand, over 1 million times or something crazy.
I love it.
And from that, I guess led people to search, because then they've gone to watch our YouTube channel, and so we've added hundreds and hundreds of subscribers a couple days in a row this week. Anyway, it's kind of cool because we put the YouTube out really for most of our viewers, just so they can watch the radio show afterwards, etc. So it's just fun watching that grow, and we'll see where that goes. Who knows? So Nick told us it would take off one day and explode. We've only been doing the YouTube for about 3 months, and maybe we're hitting that point where it starts to go. So if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, it's just go to YouTube and search at Retire Smart LLC, and you'll find our channel.
Meanwhile, we're keeping the shoulder to the plow, the shoulder to the wheel here at headquarters here at Retire Smart, specifically the Midwest Learning Center. David, you and Sean Swanson are going to visit in the next segment about our upcoming Social Security Blueprint workshop. These workshops, David, the last round we had, I think it was estate planning. We're running around to the kitchen and the conference room grabbing some extra chairs. Speaking of blowing up, but we can only fit so many people in the room, so we do need to know. We need you to register if you're going to come.
Yeah, we had a
402.
couple bring guests that weren't registered, and that led
Yeah.
to a little overcrowding at the
Which
last
we
class.
want to
It's great,
accommodate you, but
yeah.
there is 402-369-7777. There's no charges, no obligation. This is for clients. It's also for the general public. But please call and let us know, because wow, we're packing them in. So we've got a succession this week. We've got the Smart Social Security Blueprint, Wednesday, May 31st, 6:30, right here at the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. And the next day, Thursday, June 1st, we have Smart Insurance Workshop. That's with Michael Luna of Smart Protection. We offer it twice. We offer it at 10 a.m. or 6:30 p.m., and those are both right here in the Midwest Learning Center at
And
Retire
that
Smart.
is a really great class, just so you understand how your auto insurance works, your homeowner's insurance, things like umbrella policies, understanding things like
Well,
stack
you have
insurance.
benefited
Yeah.
from what Michael Luna offers at Smart Protection.
No, he saves me. Now I've got multiple properties and a lot of vehicles and stuff, and adult children, et cetera, that basically, I help or what have you. And so, I mean, I saved over $6,000 a year in my insurance costs just on, the stuff I have here in Nebraska. It doesn't include properties I have elsewhere. So, you never know what you don't know. We say it all the time. You don't know what you don't know. And so he showed me a couple of unique tricks on how to get basically and actually increase my coverage by saving money. I didn't actually have to discount or walk away from coverage. I actually increased coverage in the areas I needed it most. And let's face it, understanding what kind of risk that can hit you from left field, that's part of what that class is all about. So I really encourage you to attend.
You've worked hard to build up that retirement nest egg. You don't want it to get it wiped out by an unforeseen damage claim against you. Make sure you're properly covered. So the Smart Insurance Workshop is Thursday, June 1st, 10 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. It's the same presentation. We just want to accommodate folks. 10 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. right here at the Midwest Learning Center. But again, please call to register, 402-369-7777. And David, I quickly want to mention, because Retire Smart was a major corporate sponsor of the annual Assure Women's Center Banquet, the Imagine Banquet. Assure is, of course, a pro-life crisis pregnancy center. The remarks by Seth Dillon, the keynote speaker, actually the whole program is available to the public at firststeptolife.com/imagine. firststeptolife.com/imagine. David, what you and I, one of the many things we enjoyed about Seth Dillon's presentation was the humor that was mixed in. A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's very entertaining.
Absolutely, it
But
was.
he's also deadly serious about we cannot abandon the truth in these times. We must stand up for the truth.
No, and I thought he threaded that needle pretty well. He really did. He just kind of delivered a message and his beliefs, his moral beliefs, but he does it with satire, and it's, some people, of course, don't understand what satire is, and so I mean, his stories about Twitter locking him out and everything, he covered that. It's really worth a watch if you got time, and we'll have that link posted on the YouTube channel so you can find it.
It's the kind of thing you can share with your children or with other people who might bristle at, that's all this right wing propaganda. He's funny, he's entertaining, he draws you in with humor. Firststeptolife.com/imagine. Dylan's remarks begin about an hour and 7 minutes into the presentation, if that's where you want to focus. David, the weekly team meeting, I was scribbling notes as fast as I could. Technicals versus fundamentals. Can you lay that one out for us?
Well, so we look at technical information. This is looking at patterns, charts, moving averages for major indices and individual equities and bonds and things like this. So there's a lot of data that can be derived from technical. And there's some people that trade or make all decisions based on just technical information. Then there's fundamental information. This is is the company making its earnings? Are they going to do better than expected, less than expected? What's the price to earnings? What's the book value of the company? What's the dividend that they can pay? Would they have to cut their dividend? All this thing is fundamental data, and then there's broad fundamental data on the economy, right? We talk about this all the time. There's leading indicators, lagging indicators, the job market, consumer price index, producer price index, the ISM index. All these factors go into collectively our system here so that we can make the best decisions on a macro level for our clients where we think the economy is going. And we've been talking about it for a while. We're not real optimistic right now with the current outlay of our economy. But technically, what you were talking about in that meeting is, I told you the charts were breaking out to the upside about a week ago. And it was very clear breakout to the upside, but it was mainly five big stocks. We call it Magma, which was basically, you had Meta, which is the old Facebook. You had Apple. You got basically Google, and you got Amazon, et cetera. You got these stocks that are leading the way, but the breath is not there. And if they falter, it will be troublesome. So then I talked about the fundamentals being as bad as I've seen, and the technicals are looking really good. That puts us in the crosshairs. We believe downside is more realistically the future. And then, of course, after I said that, this week we saw the markets kind of fade because, and I talked about it in that meeting, Chip, the catalyst could be the debt ceiling impasse, right? The last time the Congress pushed it to the limit and actually went over, and you got to go back over a decade ago, 2011, 2012, the market dropped over 20% when they went past the so-called limit. Now, there's arguments on Congress right now, and is it really June 1st or not, et cetera. I'm not here to one way or the other, but they're not gonna give in to the last minute anyway. And so that's where I think the market, if it breaks out the bottom of this current technical wedge we have, you could see some pretty good downside pretty fast. Not saying that's going to happen, but are you protected? Do you have somebody who's proactive in the portfolio management and structures your portfolio in a way that you can ride through that storm, right? And feel confident that your retirement is still going to be on track, because the '08 scenarios that we've lived through, the dot-com bubble way back when, early in my career, I wasn't as well versed at the dot-com, but I did fairly well for our clients as well during 2008 because we understood how to read the tea leaves, so to speak, right? And so we can't prognosticate perfectly, but we want to show people how to take what's called a proper risk adjusted chance at performance or return. And there's nothing wrong with, understanding the markets can go up and down, but how much risk are you taking for the expected return? And if that is unskewed unfairly, where the risk is 4 times as great as the return, that's not what I call a fair horse trade. And so we want to show people what their portfolio looks like. We do a complementary risk analysis as part of our smart planning process and lay that out so they can make a decision. I might want some help changing the way I'm currently allocated.
There's one more note I want to share with listeners, David. And sometimes you use technical and analytical language, and then sometimes your exact words were, the banking sector is, quote, falling apart, end quote.
We've been talking about this for a while. Now, this is not quite as systemic as we had during the '08, but there are a multitude of banks that will yet fail, unfortunately, because they have certain types of assets on their books, okay? And the Fed is stubbornly raising rates still, and we'll see what happens here in June if they make another move or effectively pause. but we're talking in particular of commercial real estate that has to be refinanced on some of these banks' balance sheets. And we talked about it last week. Corporations that maybe just we're not going to pay our rent right now. We'll deal with the fallout on that later and get sued. But the bank doesn't have that income, can't pay its bills, if you will. And if those notes have to get refinanced, mortgage rates this week went over 7% for a 30-year mortgage again. Right. And so if these notes are at 3 or 4% and have to be refinanced at maybe twice that rate, who's going to be able to pay that, right? If the business or the real estate is losing tenants, and we've talked about that, office spaces, 26, the equivalent of 26 Empire State Buildings is empty in Manhattan right now. So
Yeah,
that's
these
going to
ghost towns within these major urban
so it's
areas.
not systemic, but do you know which banks own them? And we're doing some digging now, and we're not going to name names on the air here, but there are certain banks that are a little bit more, let's just say, at risk right now, in our opinion, than others. But this will lead to a general drawdown because people will panic. And we've talked about the bank run; it ain't so silent, right? And you can do it on an app. People transfer money rather quickly, so it just means there's trouble on the horizon. And the idea that it's fine is ridiculous. And in fact, Warren Buffett kind of called out, the banking industry here because J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, J.P. Morgan basically bought First Republic, one of the failed banks we talked about, at a cost of $13 billion of insurance to the taxpayer, I believe, right? FDIC insurance that you and I are paying, and they booked $2.6 billion in profit immediately. How's that working out for you and
Well,
I?
not only Warren Buffett, but another Warren, Elizabeth Warren. In fact, you sent me this story from advisorhub.com. Warren blasts regulators over First Republic sale to JP Morgan. Well, you also have expressed some concerns about how that deal went down.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is you and I, the taxpayer, are on the hook for this, and they profited instantly from it. And again, this is the haves and the elites organizing these things. I don't think it was a fair bidding process, in my opinion. Again, but again, this is the problem, and this is going to put the average American further distance from the elites and say, "Oh, look at them; they're screwing us over, Wall Street and et cetera." So, well, while we technically are part of Wall Street, we think people need to understand whoever they're going to get advice from, they should probably try to find an independent, fiduciary-based advisor that they feel is going to give them the straight scoop and do what's in their best interest.
Well, now we've arrived at the report card, 402-369-7777. That's what we offer. It's a comprehensive review of your entire financial situation. Maybe you're in great shape. Maybe you need to make a few changes, especially in these unprecedented times. Find out. No charge, no obligation. Complimentary report card. 402-369-7777. Up next, it's time for another visit with our go-to guy on Social Security, financial advisor Sean Swanson. He's up next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Joining us this week is a financial advisor at Retire Smart who is our go-to guy on Social Security. David, please introduce our special guest.
Hey, thanks, Chip. Yeah, we're excited again to have Sean Swanson, one of our advisors here who leads our Social Security class. We call it the Blueprint for Social Security, into the studio again. Sean, thanks for taking time to stop by.
Thanks for inviting me, David.
Absolutely. So I know we've got an upcoming class. We'll get the details out on that in just a moment. But really, I just want to talk. There's a lot of rhetoric going around right now on Social Security. People are like, oh, it's going to run out of money. And if you're at the right age, you're getting these letters. Now, just so you know, we used to send the letter every year, right? Every recipient got a letter. And then they realized, why are we sending a 34-year-old their Social Security estimates? He probably just throwing that in. And so they saved $5.9 billion in postage by stop mailing these out, except they mail them to you every 5 years.
Great idea.
Yeah, just
that's good.
kind of thinking. Well, just remember, I've retired a lot of rocket scientists, and we've had some great innovations come out of the space program. And we spent about $600,000 developing what's called the gel pen. It'll write it in upside down in gravity. A lot of people use gel pens all over. Pharmaceutical companies give them out, right? And then we just asked the Chinese and Russians what they use, and it's a number 2 pencil, right?
Yep.
So sometimes the government can spend extra money on things they don't need. But anyway, let's back to the topic at hand. The government does like to spend money, which is why we have this entitlement program, as it's called or referred to. I don't necessarily think it really is. You pay in, you're supposed to get back, right?
Yep.
It's basically a forced investment account is what it really boils down to. They make Americans, through tax deduction, pay into a system that is supposed to be a safety net or a blanket, if you will, to help you in retirement. The problem is over half of Americans, Sean, are relying on this as their single biggest source of income in retirement, right?
It was never intended to be there, right? As President Dwight David Eisenhower said in his quote talking about Social Security, that it was designed to be part of an overall plan. So it was never designed to be the only thing that Americans had. And like you said, unfortunately, there's 50% or more of Americans have only Social Security for retirement.
And for I think it's 62%. Don't quote me exact percentage here. I don't have the reference here, but it's the number one source of income for even those that have other sources of income for 2/3 basically of retirees, and that can be scary. And then, so obviously, when we have the topic or talk of, hey, it's going to run out of money, or they're going to cut your benefits by 20% as the current estimate in approximately 11 years.
Yep.
That's right around the corner.
It is.
That's right there. That's before I get there, right? And would start drawing, et cetera. So, what does that mean? What should people really be concerned with? And what's the solution?
Well, there have been a ton of different solutions floated, and as you mentioned, there's two proposed solutions. You can either increase payroll taxes, meaning take even more of our money out of our checks, or you can reduce benefits. And there have been a bunch of different ideas that have been floated out there. One of the things that, if people do come to the Social Security blueprint that we'll talk about, is there's different generations in America, and they contribute in a different way mathematically to the Social Security formula. So I won't give that away, but that talks about how there's maybe a little bit more stability than some folks may think. But the ideas that have been the most common that have been floated would be, of course, benefit reductions. There's something called, as you know, David, the full retirement age. So for people that are like me, that are born after 1959, their Social Security full retirement age is 67. And for people that are in the younger generation, Social Security may change that to a threshold of age 70 or beyond. That would reduce some of the mathematical tug on the system, because people would have to wait longer to get their full retirement age money.
Well, and I was actually recently blessed to be a guest on Maria Bartiromo's show on Fox Business. This is a couple weeks back on a Monday morning, and this topic came up. They kind of pitched this very issue to me, that the younger generation, millennials in particular, are complaining, hey, we're going to have to pay the brunt of this, and it's the boomers who are going to be collecting all these checks. Well, the boomers have been paying. I want to make sure you understand that most of the way. So one of the things I brought up was demographically, that one, baby boomers started working almost 5.5 years earlier than their current generation that's coming out of high school and college right now, Gen Zers. So these are kids basically 24 and under. I call them kids, right? And they're adults, obviously. But as they're entering the workforce, they're getting their first job over 5 full years later than their baby boomer counterparts. So if they have to wait 5 years longer, i.e. 72 versus 67, to draw benefits, they are in fact basically paying into the system for the same amount of time, right?
Good point.
So these are some of the things I argue. Now, I will let you know that you can make Social Security solvent by one move, and that would take payroll tax, which is currently basically 6.2% for the employee and then 6.2 for your employer, and move both of those to 8.1%. That is projected to make Social Security solvent all the way through 2095. But that's almost a 4% tax increase, right? And Social Security is already the largest tax most American workers pay, and they don't realize it when you include the employer behalf. And as me, as the employer, I pay you, Sean.
Yep.
It's factored into what I pay you. I know I have to pay that portion, right? So
Yep.
it's into the wage. It's calculated as an employer offers a job to somebody. So it's currently 12.4% basically tax on your income. Now, what's changed too is we cap that tax, and we've had a monstrous increase in how much income we do. Like just a couple years ago, that cap was about $137,000. Today, it's over $160,000 of income has to pay that full tax. And then once you're above that, you are exempt because there's a cap on the benefit. So it is argued by me, and this may be new to you. What if, just so you know, President Trump had his tax returns published against his will, but they're out there, so we grabbed them and took a look at them. He's 78 years old, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's not drawn Social Security. He's fully eligible for a max benefit, and he's not taking it. Why? Well, he doesn't really need it. It's not going to change his life. It's he could pull 50 grand or whatever his benefit number would be, and his spouse could eventually, who's much younger, will eventually be able to collect the spousal benefits there. But he's not taking it. But what if we went to people like that and gave them a tax credit for turning it down?
Nice.
In other words, if you don't pull 50 grand, we'll give you 25% of that back as a tax credit, right? So now you have people of means that could voluntarily agree. It's not a tax, or they get a tax credit for not taking. But now they're not taking the money. Therefore, those dollars could stay in the system. And I bet you'd have millions of people would opt into that for the tax credit. Be more important at the income levels some of these folks are at. So you could actually move the age back. And by the way, folks, we've only done it once, right? This has been around since 1935, and in 1983 is the only time we did an actuarial change on when you can draw. And just since 1983, 40 years ago now, we've added 6.2 years to the average life expectancy in America. So if we're living longer, it makes sense to push it out further, right? Now, I think ultimately the solution will be, unfortunately, higher taxes in some form. They're going to tax more income, probably up to $250,000 has to pay that tax. There's even proposals by Bernie Sanders, et cetera, to tax everything above 400,000. So you stop at the 160, then you're free to 400, and then above that, tax it all again. That would be a big tax on a lot of people. But I don't think they need to do that. I think they need to maybe move it up 0.3 of a point from 6.2 to 6.5. I hate taxes, but I'm a realist in compromise, right? And then actuarially, hey, if you're 50 to 55, we're going to push your age out to 68. If you're 45 to 50, it's going to be 69. If you're under that, it's going to, under that, it's going to be 70. And then if you're under 30, it's going to be 72. And let the chips fall where they may. And I bet that solves the problem pretty much. And you're going to talk about the size of these generations at the class, right?
Yes, I will.
So people need to understand it's not just, it's not fair this age. We need to talk about how many people are in the workforce within each particular generation. I think that's one of the things you'll cover, right?
Yes, absolutely. We'll cover it in the Social Security class coming up on Wednesday, May 31st here at the Midwest Learning Center. It begins at 6:30. I'd suggest everyone call right away because the last two classes we've had, David, as you know, have been completely packed, not an empty seat. So they would just call the main Retire Smart number to register for the class, and they'll get some great information.
Now, you're also going to go through some of the unique benefits, et cetera. So if somebody were single versus married, you'll cover, the decisions they need to make, right? You'll talk about if somebody, unfortunately, is divorced or if they're a widow or widower, what's available. And by the way, if you're a widow or widower, you do have benefits available as early as age 60. Not always the right choice, but these are the things that you learn is how the system works. And I believe a married couple has about 530 plus different combinations of how they can actually draw Social Security. Right?
There are, yes.
So the odds that you pick the exact right one are pretty low, right?
That's why I think we need people, it would be better for them to have professional help with this because we have some sophisticated tools where we can run a Social Security maximization report for everybody that comes to the class. And that's a frequently requested item from the class. They're getting something of value.
And of course, what we do is on top of that maximization, we show them how to what we call optimize it, right? Which is understanding, hey, based on when we think your life expectancy is, we'll show you how to get the gross dollar from Social Security. But we also want to show you how to make the right taxation choice, right? Because it could be a $50,000 tax bill if you make the wrong choice that you don't necessarily have to pay. And so there are other factors. What other resources do you have? Do you have money in retirement accounts? Are you blessed to have a pension? All these things would change the calculation and taxation of Social Security, right?
Absolutely.
So again, this class is going to be when? When's this class coming up here?
Wednesday, May 31st at 6:30 p.m. right here at the Midwest Learning Center.
So if you'd like to get registered for that, these do fill up. It's our most popular class right now, 402-369-7777. Well, Sean, we are amazingly already out of time. It's amazing how fast these things go. But I appreciate you stopping by the studio and look forward to hearing the results from this class. And I know you'll continue to bless people with a lot of great knowledge. So thank you so much.
Thanks, David.
All right, Chip, what do we have next?
Up next, you have questions. David Brooks has answers. Q&A is next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Into the Q&A we go. David, I have a barrage of questions about the debt ceiling. This is from a client, an avid listener of ours. I'm going to throw these at you and let you take them in whatever order makes the most sense. The questions are, is there a favorable agreement on the debt ceiling with Biden and the House? How will Retire Smart investment strategies change based on the outcome? Will Retire Smart get more into equities and things we're used to being invested in? How quickly will Retire Smart react? David.
We react every week no matter what the news flow is. And so always put our portfolios in a forward-looking view where we think the economy is going.
Proactive.
Yeah.
That's one of your main buzzwords. Proactive.
Absolutely. We we've talked about it a while. We believe equities have some further downside is more probable than much higher upside, even if the debt ceiling were to be settled, today or the first of this week, because what it means is more government spending, right? Which means that puts inflationary pressures on the economy every time they raise the debt ceiling. It's just more money basically being printed, if you will, and no more necessary income to get it to put it back, right? To pay it back. And so that puts more pressure on the feds, the central bank, on their inflation fight, which is why you had talking head after talking head from those Neil Kashkari and others from the Federal Reserve trying to say, even if we do pause in June, it doesn't mean we're done. It doesn't mean we're done. They're trying to emphasize it doesn't mean we're done because, unfortunately, inflation is sticking around longer than they wish. It's sticky. We have said it's peaked, but it's still a problematic problem, and therefore this would just lead to further hikes, unfortunately, which would mean further downside for the things that we're talking about, the housing sector, the banking institute, all the things we talked about earlier in the show, because higher rates mean higher mortgage rates and higher refinancing rates on businesses that have no choice but to refinance some of that debt or strategically sell out or default on properties, et cetera. So not rosy, regardless if it gets settled or not, at least in the short term.
It's a never-ending balancing act, isn't it? Because you don't want to be static. You can't just stay on automatic pilot. Now, we don't just jump around willy-nilly, but we are alert and nimble and can pivot when we need to when it comes to people's portfolios.
And the way we run most people's portfolios is we're running 4 to 7 different portfolios simultaneously. And one of those has, we call it our buffered portfolio. It's basically we're selling options above the market, way above the market. We collect what's called premium, right? And that premium is used to buy protection on the downside. So we can stay exposed to the market with some of our clients' dollars, even in times where we don't see real favorable outcomes because we don't know. They could come out and do a bazooka stimulus package to the American economy and stocks could run 15%. And so you don't know. Yeah, I mean, if I were perfect at this, I wouldn't need clients' money, Chip. I'd just sit there and run my own. It'd be $1 gazillion, right? But the reality is you have to have a way to make the best choices available with the data at hand. And so we're always forward looking. We're looking at next week, next month, next quarter, and next year, constantly and every week reevaluating the way our portfolios are. In fact, we had some tweaks this week to some of the stuff that we do. So, there's no crystal ball. Anyone tells you have one is, lying to you. It's that simple.
We have some listeners, David, who are puzzled that we do spend a lot of time and attention on politics, but it's because political developments have direct impact on financial and economic situations. And there's a question here about presidential candidates. The question is, the field of Republican presidential candidates is getting more crowded. As a financial advisor, do you find any candidates especially appealing? On the other hand, are there any that scare you? What's your early view of the Republican field? David, when I say Republican field, I'm thinking of course, Donald Trump and then Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, Larry Elder has gotten in the race, the talk radio host, Asa Hutchinson, former governor of Arkansas, Tim Scott recently got in. And I'm not sure of the status of Ron DeSantis, but, well, you have said DeSantis is the future, so we can include him in this conversation as well. What do you see right now in your crystal ball, David?
Well, there's a lot of strategy gets played behind the scenes, and I don't have access to everything. But I will tell you, I think we had 17 candidates on the Republican side last time. Right?
Well, in 2016.
Yeah, in 2016. So,
right, when it was an open seat on the Republican side.
So we had 17 candidates declared then. And I don't think you're done seeing candidates declare. You have also Vice President Mike Pence, former Vice President,
floating out
there.
Yeah.
And some of this is strategic. So some people will run for president knowing they have no shot to actually win the job, at least not this early, but it's for name recognition, it's brand recognition for their political future, if you will. And of course, it's either to ultimately land a cabinet position, potentially with the outcome winner, or even somebody will be jockeying for the VP slot, right?
Be the running mate to the candidate.
And so if you strategically look at this, I will tell you, obviously, I think Trump was a phenomenal president from a policy standpoint and from the results. Now, I don't think he got a fair shot. It was, oh, you're a racist. He was called the most racist president in history more times than anybody, et cetera, et cetera. But economically, you cannot deny the data that came from the policies he did enact. A little bit of deregulation. He got tax cuts put in place, and he was working on other. And he had great foreign policy, I think, which American people are tired of us just sending money. And I mean, we're talking about the debt ceiling, yet Biden's out the other week, another $275 billion going over to Ukraine, but you can't put money into veterans benefits or something like that. It really boggles the mind. And again, now, do I have a who I think will lead? Well, I'll reserve that. I did say DeSantis is the future in general because of his leadership. And again, I like to base it on what people have actually done, right? And you see what he's done in Florida. And economically, Florida is on fire, right? They had a $21.8 billion surplus last year. Chip, that runs our whole state for 4 years in Nebraska. Runs
Yeah.
it all. That was their surplus, and they have zero income tax, right? So if you create incentives, economic activity follows. Again, the problem is people want to put the political side. I'm socially, you be you and I'll be me. And people know I am a conservative Christian person myself, but I have gay friends, lesbian friends, I have a trans friend, we have trans clients. I mean, we don't discriminate to anybody. I am who I am, and I want everybody else to be who they are. And people sometimes get the feathers ruffled on the party stuff. And I have lots of clients. I have one client, she's one of my favorites actually, but her favorite thing is she walks in and says, "Hi David, Orange Man bad." I mean, it's just, we have
Yeah.
fun with it, right?
Yeah.
But if I look at this, if you've not seen Vivek Ramaswamy, he just goes by Vic sometimes short. He's got some really good interviews that are out there. He's running 100 miles an hour. I don't know if he's got the pace to hang in there for what would be a marathon between now and next November, but I find him interesting. But as far as Larry Elder, I like him, but I don't think he has a shot, a snowball's chance, so to speak, there. Neither do I think with Miss Hutchinson. Tim Scott, I don't think has a shot either. I think that's a cabinet position post. And if you're not familiar, Senator Tim Scott, he's the African-American senator from South Carolina. He's responsible for what we have called opportunity zones, one of 60-plus tax strategies we use on a regular basis that has had a huge economic boom to a lot of cities across this country. So he's done some good. He understands the budget mechanism. So I think he would be a phenomenal person in a cabinet role for somebody who's ultimately I think this is going to come down to, though, DeSantis and Trump. I think that's who it's just the money, right? Unfortunately, that's the way the system works. Like I said, Vivek Ramaswamy, I'd like to see him make the debate stage, so to speak. I'd like to see him get some support. I may send him enough just because I want someone like that challenge. And then just since we're on the topic, flip to the other side, right? You have some Democrats starting to declare, right? And I think Robert Kennedy Jr. is a very interesting guy. I watched a podcast with him on it. It was an hour-and-a-half podcast, and he was very concisely clear. I'm not sure on that, but I'll have an answer for you within 6 months. But he had concise answers, and he was not afraid to say, "I don't know," which was refreshing from a politician in general.
Well,
So
he's also right with you on the way COVID was managed.
Oh,
on
and
the way-
absolutely, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So he's willing to at least look at the data, and
Right.
he got vaccinated. And he says he regrets it, right? And it was in
Yeah.
the podcast. So I just want people that are going to be honest and open, and that's where I think Vivek Ramaswamy and Robert Kennedy Jr. would be a phenomenal debate just to have it, because they would be cordial gentlemen, and like I said, the way we got things done, Ronald Reagan got tax cuts done, but he's the reason we have increased tax on Social Security, and he's also why we pay tax on Medicare Part B and Part D. He had to make a compromise with Tip O'Neill, right? Clinton was a good economic president, and some people don't want to admit that he was a phenomenal president for our economy, right? He actually raised taxes while he was in office, but the economy's because he gave in on some other incentives that got economic activity going. And he and Newt Gingrich compromised, and Newt had the contract for America. But we're not in that environment, at least not today, where anybody can go across the aisle. And recently, just so you know, our own congressman here, Representative Don Bacon, was just labeled, I saw a survey, the most effective person in this Congress, the 117th Congress, because he does go across the aisle and against my will sometimes. And I joke about it. I consider Don a friend, right? But he'll vote things that I'm like, what'd you do that for, right? But again,
Yeah.
this is where we are in the world. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. And we'll be talking about this, obviously, between now and the election next year. So plenty more to come there.
Let's see if we can squeeze this in really quickly. Question about financial well-being. I saw a chart put out by the Federal Reserve saying 35% of Americans felt they were economically worse off in 2022 than they were the year before. According to the chart, even during the pandemic, the number was between 20% and 25%. The Fed survey was taken in the fall of 2022 when news reports said inflation was under control and job numbers were getting stronger. Yet more than a third said they were worse off. How can that be?
Well, we are in 26th consecutive month of negative wage growth, longest streak in history. So you're making less money, no matter how you're getting raises, but inflation is eating way faster than the raises you're getting. Therefore, you're further behind each and every month. On top of that, this year, anyone that has kids that was qualifying for child tax credits lost $1,000 per kid in a tax credit starting January 1. So a single mom with 3 kids, that's $3,000 or $250 a month just taken right out of her budget. And so these policies they say are supposed to help the people on the bottom third of our economy are hurting them the worst. And inflation punishes them the most because they have to spend basically 100% of their take home pay to survive. And right now, we talked about it, it's about 112%. The average person making on the bottom two quadrants, quintiles of income, the bottom 40% are spending approximately 112% of their take home pay to survive. How do you do that? Well, you borrow money from mom and dad, or you put it on a credit card, or you're getting loans from your 401k, or we're also starting to see actual withdrawals from 401k accounts, which tells us trouble is coming here in the economy.
Don't let the shifting economic realities get you down or put you in untenable positions. Get the report card, 402-369-7777. Comprehensive review of your entire financial situation. No charge, no obligation for a complimentary report card. 402-369-7777. Up next, the powers of the IRS are expanding dramatically. We'll tell you about it next on Retire Smart with David Brooks. Welcome back to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. Well, David, eventually I do want to get to your favorite government agency, the IRS. But before we do that, and while we remove all breakables from the room, before we have that discussion, I do want to ask you about a Wall Street Journal headline that you sent to me. And it says, a housing bust comes for thousands of small-time investors. David, these are people who were promised 100% return, double your money, and you won't have any of the hassle of managing. These are apartment complexes. It didn't work out that way, David.
All right, so full disclosure, I love real estate, right? We talk about it
You
all the
mention
time.
it
It's
often.
one of my
Yeah.
favorite investments. I own quite a few real estate investments. I own it in multiple states, and I think it can be an incredible investment. But you have to know what you're doing. You don't just start off by investing, most of your hard-earned cash or retirement savings into something you know nothing or little about. So I'm excited to let you know we are starting going to be launching a class this fall called Real Estate 101. I don't know the exact name, but basically it's going to be how to start investing in real estate.
Smart real estate.
Yeah.
I like the sound of that. But
So more to come on that. But what happened here is people were preyed upon during the COVID boom. Housing, sometimes you think, oh my gosh, we're going through an economic downturn. Housing did the opposite, went through the roof, right? And the reason is mobility came to a lot of people they didn't have. One, policies in certain governmental agencies in certain cities and towns, people decided, you know what, I'm not going to live under this kind of authoritarian rule. I'm going to move to where I'm freer to do it. And because remote work was offered at a lot of places, people all of a sudden had mobility chip, and they moved to where there was better tax incentives and where they just had freedom to do what they want. And so all that moving around started to get real estate prices to heat up, right? Because there was a demand, especially in the South. We had tons of places where the prices started to get it got crazy how fast. So then those that were looking to invest and had capital were like, hey, let's take advantage of this. Real estate's going on fire. And so they started putting together these package deals, and then they sell that to the unsuspecting investor through some kind of package real estate deal. And they themselves were not fully experienced understanding what the operator was doing, and they used leverage, and that leverage just has to be unwound at some point, right? And so real estate prices, just like everything else, they can't go parabolic and stay up there. They'll have to reset to the medium average over time. And we're seeing markets, we've already talked about San Francisco's down like 20%, right? Year over year, markets that got hot. So here, people were investing in mainly multifamily apartment complexes. They were buying really old complexes and then promising we're going to refurbish these and rent them out or sell them, et cetera, and yeah. And for the first year or so, it was going swimmingly until it wasn't. And the supply chain was a problem, right? You couldn't get goods and services. You couldn't get the lumber to actually rehab at the price you said you'd do it. And so the cost runs went through the roof. It was more expensive, and people are left holding the bag as these firms go under. If you're an investor, you're left out with nothing.
I keep thinking of the movie The Big Short, about how people in 2008 got way over their skis. Now, that was housing. We're talking about apartment complexes, but isn't it basically the same dynamic?
It is. Now, listen, real estate's still good. In fact, we do real estate investing in some aspect for our clients. We show them how to get, but we do it with experienced folks, et cetera. But what happened here is you had people that were leveraging and not understanding the low rate environment, and these were variable loans that would have to reset. And this is what you're seeing with some of the banking industry right now. So there was I think an example in there. There was a 3,000 apartment complex, 4 complexes that somebody had financed at like 3%, up to 10 years ago, they started this. So these are long-term investments. But when they have to refinance them every couple of years, these are variable rates. Well, with the Fed, 10 rate hikes in the last year and a half.
Oh, now they're getting crushed by the
they can't do the
increasing
carry
interest
cost. And on
rates.
top of that,
Okay.
because we are seeing a slowdown in the economy, if the prices fade, your loan to value, now they won't loan you as much money. So let's just say you had a condo building and each unit was roughly worth $100,000. If they're only worth $85,000 today, right? That's 15. So now you're not going to be able to finance as much. When you refinance it, how are you going to cover that shortfall? So they go to the investors and they don't have the capital, and therefore they get foreclosed on. And some people, unfortunately, are going to lose everything.
I guess another big difference, David, is, and it's right in the headline, thousands of small-time investors. So these are not the big corporate houses.
No.
These are
This is not Blackstone, the largest real estate owner in
mom
the
and
country.
pop
Yep.
blowing their retirement
And
savings.
again, before you put your hard-earned money in somewhere, do your due diligence. Do the operators have the experience? Again, I think real estate is still a phenomenal investment, and there's going to be some phenomenal opportunity on the other side of this recession or somewhere in the middle of it. But don't buy things you don't know how to understand or don't understand the metrics, and do your due diligence.
All right. Well, all the breakables have been removed from the room, so we can now discuss the Internal Revenue Service. David, I want to hit you actually with a pair of headlines. These are both from the Epoch-Times. One of them is Supreme Court rules IRS can secretly grab bank records of outside parties. And then this also from the Epoch-Times, IRS audits will impact small, mid-sized businesses, according to expert testimony. What's going on here, David?
All right, let's take the second one first. All right.
Okay.
So the 87,000 new agents, over half of them are going to be focused on auditing those small and mid-sized business. And that's what the testimony shows. This is where they plan on implementing. So they're going to go after your dry cleaner, right? Your lawn guy,
I hate
your pool
this. They're going to
service,
shake down the people who don't have the resources to
Right.
fight back,
This
basically.
is the
Yeah.
solopreneur, as I call it, the solo entrepreneur. They're out there
Ugh.
grinding away, trying to make it for their living. Maybe bought a franchise like a donut place or something, and they invested all their life savings, and they're grinding in there, working 80 hours a week, trying to make the business work, stay afloat through COVID and all this. And then they're going to get hit with, we're going to audit you, and then they're going to tell them you owe us $12,000, and a tax attorney or somebody's going to say, I need a $25,000 retainer to fight this. What are you going to do? You're going to write the check. And that's why they're going after it, because they know you won't fight, right? And if you do fight and lose, you could lose everything, literally. And so, unfortunately, they target people for a reason. And that's what the testimony, and this gets my blood boiling, right? I mean, and so, number one, we use tax strategies to help our entrepreneurs and our retirees pay less taxes. But one of the things we do is we don't even have to go into gray areas, Chip. We don't do offshore accounts. I don't have any Cook Island accounts or these funny trusts I hear people pitch on the internet and what have you. It's the tax code itself lays out clearly and concisely. You may arrange your affairs, and the Supreme Court, it says it, you may arrange your affairs in any way you would like to pay the least tax possible, as long as you're doing it within the code. Well, the code nationwide has over 1,700 tax incentives in it between Fed and states that you can take advantage of, but you have to understand it, and most people don't. And this is where they're going to go after the folks that are not, unfortunately, financial literate when it comes to the IRC, the Internal Revenue Code. So this is a sad day for small business. So document whatever you're doing. And we can help with this, by the way. And Abigail's wonderful to do tax planning for these type of clients, so they're okay. The other article really upsets me. They can go get my bank information, because if a counterparty, a vendor, like let's say we bought food from a local restaurant to cater into one of our classes.
Okay.
That vendor, that restaurant turns out to do something shady and gets audited by the IRS, because now I'm a cross vendor. They can now go access my bank accounts without my knowledge.
Oh, my goodness.
And look at my bank
Yeah.
records.
Okay.
So it's what we call counterparty risk. So that
Now, I guess
makes my and this was unanimous. This was not make me a very
Right.
happy person.
Well, now I'll say this in defense of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, well, Congress has authorized this. It's in statute. So they may not have liked it, but the judges said this is how the law is written and we have to uphold the law.
So Don Bacon, if you're listening, you want to get back on the good side here, go and undo that for us, okay? But this, I mean, seriously, if you're an entrepreneur, this is putting the fear of God in people, right? Those are believers, obviously. But because they're scared, there's kind of risk, and we do everything right. We dot our I's, cross our T's, but still, that's nobody's business. And now, who's that going to get open and leaked to? And do you trust them looking in your information? No. And what is your banker? If I do a lot of transactions with a local banker, know me by name. It's like I'm like Norm when I walk into my particular institution by name. Hey, Dave, And so all the tellers know me by name because I do a lot of stuff, right? And if the IRS comes looking at that and pulls a record, are they going to look at me differently when I walk in? What is he doing, right? So this has a lot of problems for me. But again, don't take it. Take action. Be proactive in your tax planning. Tax Smart, our tax planning company for entrepreneurs, can help you make sure you understand what you're doing, how you're documenting, et cetera. And Abigail McNaney, who is one of our key tax planners, and Eric Blankmeyer can help you with this stuff.
Well, and then we've got the tax planning guide. Don't forget about that. That's 32 pages. That's no charge, no obligation. Or just take the plunge and get the report card because tax analysis is a major component of the report card. The report card, the tax planning guide, 402-369-7777. Now, don't forget about the Smart Social Security Blueprint Workshop Wednesday night, May 31st, 6:30, right here at the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. And then the next day, June 1st, the Smart Insurance Workshop. That's 10 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. Thursday, June 1st, right here at the Midwest Learning Center at Retire Smart. But you must register, 402-369-7777. David, bring us home.
Hey, we had an awesome patriotic parade this weekend. I hope you had a blessed Memorial Day and relax and enjoy the day off. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to Retire Smart with David Brooks. I'm Chip Maxwell. For David Brooks and the entire team at Retire Smart, have a great week.